What's happening, everyone? John Hendricks here with another episode of The Drive presented by Royal Honda on Boot Crew Media. Well, it's Wednesday. Saints training camp is officially over with, guys. So we got to look at the team one last time before their preseason game against the Chargers. They're going to have a walkthrough tomorrow. And then, obviously, after the preseason game, a lot of work to be done as far as deciding on the roster, the final 53-man roster. A lot of cuts to be made, 27 players down. Then you have to worry about your 16-man practice squad. So just wanted to take a opportunity, talk a little bit about today and then kind of hand out some awards, I guess you could say. So first thing I would tell you is, start with this, is that, full team drills is really what we saw today. Attendance-wise, got a lot of players back, right? The only person that we didn't see today is Michael Thomas. You saw Carl Granderson back. You saw Pete Warner back. You saw these guys, although they weren't really practicing, let's just put it that way. So guys like James Hurst were around, Landon Young, Chase Hansen, Pete Warner. Those are guys that were around but not participating in practice. Dwayne Washington's another one. Then there were guys that were in shells, which is what the team was wearing today, and we're doing work off to the side, like P.J. Williams. You had Marshawn Lattimore, Granderson, who we just talked about, and then Alontae Taylor. So good sign that the team is starting to get back healthy. Cesar Ruiz was obviously in the mix too. He had been missing. Troutman's suffering. He's had a concussion, so that's kind of where he's at in his protocol. But you had pretty much a whole bunch of team periods on Wednesday. As far as it goes, not a super ton of action today. It was worth noting, red zone, obviously defense, first team defense held really strong against Jameis Winston and company. Second team red zone with Andy Dalton. They get in the final play with Rashid Shaheed from the 3-yard line. So that was a good thing to see. And then really the clock management. So they did another 1:15 on the clock and, final drives, if you will. And both of them ended up in a Will Lutz's field goals. He ended up finishing camp outstanding, only missed 2 all of training camp. And we're talking 49-51, right? This is not just chump change. He did outstanding this training camp. And so he had one for 51, one for 38 on the other one. So real good action in that sense. I thought Marquez Callaway was a guy that had a really good standout practice. Him and Juwan Johnson are probably the ones I noticed the most. They simulated some crowd noise today, not in a sense of crowd noise, but really they just use like music, loud music, while the teams were getting to the huddle. That was both on offense and defense, just kind of really trying to get a feel for silent counts, just kind of getting that mode. So that kind of wraps things up. 20 practices, we've learned a lot. Obviously we've gone back to rookie mini camp, OTAs, mandatory mini camp, a lot of stuff we've seen. So first and foremost, what I'd say is my MVP, my star of training camp, and I think this is a pretty good consensus if you ask most of the Saints beat writers right now, is it's got to be Paulson Adebo. I think was the most consistent guy in camp. I think he's grown the most in camp. Look, you went in this year saying, okay, well, yeah, second corner, but he's come in and just really taken his game to another level. And you ask all the players, it's just he's so locked in, he's so focused, and it just makes that last year's pick just more and more looking like, man, this was a real steal. Finally getting somebody that, you see their potential, hit on their potential. And alongside, opposite of Marshawn Lattimore, this secondary tandem is just so good. And then you had Marcus May back there and obviously Tyrann Mathieu. And then you're adding Bradley Roby, C.J. Gardner-Johnson in the slot. And this is a really scary secondary. So I think he's got to be the MVP of training camp. I think honorable mention would have to go to Will Lutz, just because, again, missed 2 kicks. One was from 57. Then he makes the next kick. Then he had another one that was just, a little off. But 2 kicks compared to what we saw last year when you had Brett Maher, you had Aldrick Rojas, you had Cody Parkey, right? Brian Johnson. You had 4 different kickers besides Will Lutz. And so I think honorable mention would definitely go to them. I'd say comeback player for me would be Tony Jones Jr. Guy that didn't really have a great start to camp, kind of a little bit rough, and then really he just turned things on. I think he's one that came on late and just really ran with it. And, this is why they dropped Divine Ezigbo. he's going to be RB number 3 unless something crazy happens. And, you got to feel good about that when it comes to the final roster. Another honorable mention I'd have somebody who came on really late in camp, and I would say late, but really against the Packers. And, up until this week has had a good game. It was Malcolm Roach. We've talked about him on this program. I think he's somebody that's really underrated. Ask Cam Jordan about those guys in the trenches, and they just do so much that a lot of people just don't notice, right? And so, I think what's to appreciate is the fact that they can generate some pressure from the inside and, most importantly, stop the run. That's the biggest thing. So I think Roach deserves an honorable mention. And then, of course, we can't talk about awards or talk about stuff without saying, hey, Michael Thomas looked really good early on, and it's the story of training camp when we started. Obviously he's been out for the past couple of days and with the hamstring, and we'll see where that kind of lands as far as action goes. I wouldn't expect to see him on Friday in the preseason game against the Chargers, but look, it's good to see Michael Thomas be Michael Thomas, and in the same breath, wide receiver, sticking with him, Chris Salave is a guy that stood out throughout training camp. Again, slow kind of start to training camp, but then he had that aha V8 moment, if you will, and just kind of took off from there. So he deserves definitely a lot of praise. I would say most improved would have to go to Trevor Penning. And we talked about, sorry, this is what happens when you don't mute your phone. But you talk about most improved player in training camp is got to be Trevor Penning, just because the simple fact that he just was having to rough go. Left tackle, pass pro was an issue and such. Obviously, there are things that, you look through the course of it that he got better. The fighting was the big thing. Everybody blowing it up saying, oh, this guy got kicked out of practice for 3 days straight. And he started fights. That was, you remember those days, right? But that wasn't really the case. But at any rate, so I think he's gotten a lot better in his pass protection. You can see he's more comfortable in what he's doing with the hand placement, all the different things that he's with his technique. Again, I watched him yesterday for at least 10 of his pass protection reps, and he only lost one of those, right? He's going up against Taco Charlton, Peyton Turner, Marcus Davenport, Nico Lalos. I mean, it was just everybody. It wasn't just one player who knew those moves. So he's a guy that will obviously pay a lot of attention to against the Chargers. But, look, a lot of players flashed. They're going to have to make some interesting decisions on what they do with like Kirk Merritt. Converting to a running back, that's one of those things that you have to look at. Do you keep 6 wide receivers? Do you keep a 7th? Is Traquan Smith is a guy I feel like, makes the roster because of his blocking. Marquez Callaway, is he the odd man looking out, or is it Kirk Merritt, right? And so those are some things that this team is going to have to contemplate for the final roster. But, what I'd say is Adebo is a guy who shined. Lutz is an honorable mention there. Malcolm Roach is another one who's came on late. Tony Jones Jr., I would say, comeback type of player for training camp. And then, Trevor Penning and Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, these are all guys that have to get some good love. And of course, Jameis Winston, right? Andy Dalton looked good, but, Jameis Winston, from where he was at, obviously everybody talking about the limp in his step or the brace and all that good stuff. But, he came on in a big way, and I think he's played some of his best football, the past couple of days, and it's only going to be ascending, and they're going to need him to be successful. So that's a little bit of what happened at day 20, final day of Saints training camp, and just a few rewards that we've handed out. We'll absolutely talk a lot more about this and preview a little bit of the Chargers here coming soon on Boot Crew Media. But for now, thanks to Royal Honda for producing today's show. Again, I'm John Hendricks. Have a good one. Thanks.